Miss Holly Marie. How are you today, Holly?
I'm excellent, Chris. Thank you. How are you?
I am perfect. Just ask my wife.
Hey, did you? Here's a question for you, Deb. Did you ever do that DNA test?
No.
You never did that. How about you, Holly?
I have not done that yet either.
You didn't. I'm just waiting for the thing and that to come up. My sister, Annette. Oh, of course we have the same DNA, right? So what happened was, and I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get it on here either. Probably not. Anyway, she got the DNA test back from, what is that, Ancestry something? Yeah, and I found out, and many psychics that have been on the network over the years has always told me that I came from, the reason why I like boats and things like that is because I came from a background of seafaring people, like Norse people, that kind of stuff. I almost fell on the floor when I saw the DNA test because it was mostly from the Netherlands area.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. I mean, you got a little bit of this and that and the other thing in there because you got some Spanish, you got a little bit of Italian, you got, whatever in that because you were, whatever your tribe was, you moved. As things started moving, you moved. Boats made you move. And it was really, really fun. I mean, it was everything the psychics had said was true.
Well, there's good confirmation now, isn't it?
That's true. I didn't think that thing even worked. And it did.
I mean, you got to think, how valid can something like that be to get your DNA tested? I mean, you just have to believe them, right? You really have no other proof of anything. But when you got people doing psychic work telling you things and then you get that scientific proof, there's really no denying what's going on here.
Oh man, it was just too much. We were thinking about doing it at one time, and I said, that's baloney. I already know. This one said this, and this one said this. So my sister had gotten this for Christmas, and she sent me all the answers to it, and she said, "You're not going to believe this, but everything you told me is correct."
That's insane.
And I said, hey, wow, this is cool. So
well,
go figure.
A lot of people do this stuff like that for entertainment, just to see what comes up. Like a lot of people go to psychics just for entertainment to see what they're going to say. Okay, but when you get the confirmations, that's the cool part.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm actually seeing. I know I had to think they break it down in percentages. Like each person gets a percentage of something. Like you're a percentage of this country or whatever.
Well, yeah. I'm afraid that they'll tell me I'm from the moon or something, and I don't, You're from the future. I can't see your DNA. You must be from the future.
Now, we got a special show lined up tonight. Now, on A Quantum View, Randy Maugans and his co-host, Emily. Randy Maugans, I've been on his show many times and had wonderful interviews. Mr. Insight himself, he's got a lot to say, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. Holly, we just went through a full moon. It was a pink moon.
Yes, we did. I think we survived.
The reptilians are leaving kicking and screaming, and they're going to make sure that somebody pays for what's going on around the planet. That is my sob story of the change of energy. But every time something bad happens, something good happens. And what I'm finding now is that we're really able to find some more truth, more knowledge, more honesty and answers when we're dowsing and finding out exactly what's wrong with people. And the things that we're finding are so accurate, so precise, and the clearings that are happening are really working in an awesome way. One of the things I've noticed is that we're able to take people out of the time matrix now. We call it time-space. So by removing them from time-space, you can then put them into space-time, which is a bigger connection to source.
Yes, I had an excellent clearing from you, and I feel fantastic.
Pulling you out of that old paradigm or that time matrix made a big difference.
Yeah, it really did. And it was my intention to pop an email to you and thank you. But since I was out of the time matrix, I just lost track of it.
Now you got an excuse.
Right? But no, I did feel a stronger connection. And yeah, it's been interesting. I just had a really interesting situation on my end where a real energy vampire left my life literally kicking and screaming. Done. all gone. So the reptilians are leaving, and the circle is tightening, and I like it. It feels good.
Now when I find a reptilian in somebody and I move it out, there's also a sword. It's called the Sword of Time, which locks us into the time matrix. You remove that, and then people have a lot more freedom. But moving the reptilians out, it's now showing big effects. It's clearing the way. It's really getting down to the whole nitty-gritty, finding a lot of reptilian DNA within people. If you have a very chronic problem and it just doesn't seem to want to go away, always a weak liver or a weak brain or something like that, you go after the reptilian DNA, even the Arcturian DNA, and get rid of it, all of a sudden things start to get better. So more and more good stuff coming. I think I'm about 2 or 3 steps away from being able to cure things like ALS. It's coming really quick, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's get on to the show. We're all experiencing this reality that's going on the planet. My belief that governments certainly want to cause this to cause confusion. Hey, anybody want to buy a cheap flight on Delta? The only thing Delta did, they sent an apology only when they found out that their shares are going in the tank. Let's bring onto the show Mr. Randy Maugans. Randy, welcome to A Quantum View.
Hey, Chris. Good to hear from you. Arcturians are nasty, by the way.
They are. You know what? Little green guys with 3 fingers. Talked to an ex-CIA agent. We're sitting in a hot tub in Florida, and he starts telling me all about them. He didn't know who I was. This Emily, where's Miss Emily?
I'm here, and I love you too, Chris, and thanks for having us. And just to jump in, there's even a conspiracy about the conspiracy now. So it's actually United Airlines, and now there's more video coming out showing the guy being allowed back on the flight after they've dragged him out kicking and screaming, being allowed back on to get his stuff. And he's muttering all these weird things that don't seem to make any sense. And then there was an article today also that this guy apparently was arrested recently for trading prescription drugs for gay sex. So who the hell knows what it's...
I said Delta, didn't I? Not Delta United.
Yeah.
So Delta's a good airline. They don't drag you off kicking and screaming.
So who even knows what's happening? You know what I mean? Like, did that really happen? Do they want us to think it happened so we get upset about something, or so that we're distracted from the stuff in Syria or whatever? Who knows? It's getting to the point where, like, you know, you can really only be clear on the things you can actually experience yourself.
We see so much on the news, on the fake news.
Let's just say that right now we recommend the people who appear on Off-Planet Radio as prime material, and a lot of those people have their own shows or their own websites and make YouTube, so it's a good place to start. Once we ferret somebody out and decide that they're bogus, they won't be on Off-Planet Radio, and in fact, in most cases, they never were. So there you go.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Emily, who do you like?
You know, I'm finding myself listening to less and less stuff these days. I don't know what the reason is for that. You know, it's very, we just had Cynthia McKinney on our show. That show will be coming out next week. She's been a person who's always resonated for me, and we really enjoyed doing that with her. But as far as the big alternative radio hosts, there's something, obviously Alex Jones and those kinds of people, there's something wrong with all of them for me. There's like something that doesn't resonate. There's a few people that operate in the sort of more what we consider ourselves to be underground radio as opposed to alternative radio. That really more worked for me. We did some our friends Chris and Sherry Geo at Truth Frequency Radio. They do some good stuff. Greg Carlwood does some good stuff. There's a few people, but even within that, some things resonate with me, some things don't. This guy Chris Kehler that I know, he does some good stuff. He's a pretty nice guy. I think he's trustworthy.
Holly and I are basically in the same boat of doing a modality of healing. You do a lot of retreats, you do a lot of traveling, and you meet a lot of people. There's got to be some people out there that you bumped into who would basically come across as a charlatan.
Yes.
How can you tell a charlatan from somebody who's truly connected with Source and wanting to do good for the planet?
I think the easiest way to tell is they promise they can help you. Everybody knows who's who's really connected to Source, that you can only help yourself. So I come across a lot of people who promise they can help me, or they make these false promises, and you just feel it, though. The bottom line is your gut doesn't lie. Your heart doesn't lie. You feel it. And I'll tell you, the people that I allow when I need a healing, the people that I allow to heal me is a very, very small percentage of the large pool that I know.
I remember working with somebody. The person was telling me that she was doing energy healing with somebody long distance over the phone, whatever. And all of a sudden, she's experiencing an orgasm. I'm thinking to myself, what kind of sorcery is this?
I'd almost be willing to bet I know who that was, too. And that is a real sign right there that you've got a problem, because somebody just invaded your chakras.
Who can you trust? What can you trust? When can you trust it? The conspiracy of Donald Trump, where do you take off on it?
There isn't a lot of conspiracy about Donald Trump. I was on a talk show last March before the heat of the election really turned up. And I basically said then, what I'm seeing now is that we've always known that Donald Trump was a player, that he was well connected, that he didn't really have a lot of principles, and that I stated openly on that show that Donald Trump was connected to mob activity as a result of, building casinos. Obviously, you need to be connected to do that. And also the fact that he is heavily connected to Zionist Israel and Zionist Israeli interests. So these are problematic right from the start on somebody that tells you that they're going to restore the republic on a constitutional standard.
First place, why would anybody want to be the president of the United States?
Yep.
Who are the ones who really are into power? And that's reptilian. From my experience, everybody's got some kind of reptilian influence one way or another. Probably one of the most quietest conspiracies is mafia.
And in this case, by the way, we have to understand that we think of mobsters, especially here in the U.S., as swarthy Italian guys in leather jackets, inhabiting the denizens of New York City and Pittsburgh and places like that. We're talking about a global mafia that connects across all nationalities. So when we talk about the P2 Lodge, which is the High Masonic Lodge of Italy, we're talking about the overarching lodge that controls all of the mobs worldwide, including the Dragon family mobs in China, the Yakuza in Japan. All of these mobs are interconnected. They're just like the intelligence agencies. All the intelligence agencies are connected. In fact, they're nearly identical in the way they're structured and the way they function.
So
now there's a conspiracy theory.
My feeling about the thing with Donald Trump is that there's all these people who are now worried that with Trump that fascism is being brought in. And as I see it, we've been living under fascism since at least the death of JFK, but now they're ready to really make that known, to not hide it anymore. So they bring in somebody who, like Donald Trump, who is openly a corporatist, and this is kind of to sort of let everybody know that our government has been completely transformed into a corporation and is no longer anything that in any way represents, cares, or acts for the people.
Any government is basically a corporation. If you look into the legal jargon, and everybody's an employee of the corporation, we are volunteering our rights to the corporation.
That's exactly right. And government, like even constitutions, like government, whatever rights we have as human beings do not come from governments. People talk about constitutional right and rights and things like that. Our rights are natural. They come from the fact that we are here, breathing, talking, divine, beautiful, independent spirits. These aren't some things that are granted by governments. The Constitution is supposed to be there to protect those rights, but that's clearly not happening. And I always say I didn't sign the Constitution, so I don't feel bound by it.
I didn't agree to this shit.
Yeah.
She's actually technically correct. None of us signed it. The Constitution, if you look at the way it was enumerated, was really a compact between the original 13 colonies and their designees. So the states were actually the original recipients of the rights that were enumerated in the Constitution, and it was the founding fathers themselves standing in their natural persons who took those rights on and then transmitted them through the generations. So technically, none of us have an entitlement through the Constitution. What we do have is we have all of the things listed in that Constitution and even more because of the fact that we are divine beings existing in time and space on planet Earth right now. We are law. We are the law that walks the earth, and it is a moral law. It's a natural law.
I remember when my son was born, I had to go sign the legal papers for his birth. And on that form, 8.5 by 14 form, part of the form, there's 2 boxes to check. One was to check for a birth certificate. One was the legal birth, and the other was a birth certificate. And I thought, I know what this is, but I'm just going to play the game and get this done and get out of here so I can get home. And right there and then, I realized that there is avenues that you can take to dodge the system a little bit, as long as you're willing to take a bit of flack along the way out.
Well, if you go back and you look at the original language of the tax code, which I have done, you're going to find out that, at least here in the United States, I don't know how it's laid out in Canada, the income tax only applies to earnings on corporate profits. So right away, you have a very specific designation of who is required to pay income taxes. And in the United States, prior to 1940, I'll say 1942, the World War II era, less than 3% of Americans filed and or paid anything towards the federal income tax. That was understood to be a corporate tax at that time. What they did was they duped people into, quote, volunteering, which is exactly what the IRS in the United States tells you now, that the income tax is voluntary. Really? And boy, you damn well better volunteer. So you see right away that all of this has very specific language. Those boxes you were talking about on the paperwork for your son's birth, I guarantee you there were specific definitions that applied to all of those terms there that are beyond the obvious meaning of those definitions, because law is constructed on very specific definitions. That's why we have to go out and buy things like Black's Law Dictionary and look all this stuff up. So the construction of law is very important. The language of law is very important to understand how it operates. And once you start to get into that level, then you can begin to see where there exist remedies within the system.
Just like you go to the bank, the person is an advisor or an advisor.
Legalese sounds like English, but it's not. So it's using words that are the same words as English words, but it has different meanings to them. And it implies a legal system, which is what they have us under, as opposed to a lawful system, which is morally and naturally correct.
Yeah, and you can get a heck of a headache trying to figure it all out. Now, Holly, you're in California, right?
Oregon.
That's close to California, isn't it?
Too close. It's too close.
Oh, that's not nice.
The people in Oregon think it's too close. They wanted to put a sign at the border that said Californians don't come here.
Well, I actually just moved from California to Oregon.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Everybody did.
We were in California one time.
Well, yeah, because of the vaccination laws. They are out of control.
Wow. Chemtrails. And I know California is notorious.
Yep.
California, or Oregon, California, all that area, you even see checkerboard patterns. In California, is there a lot of people that talk about chemtrails, or is it kind of a hush-hush subject?
You know, there's a fair amount, but I'm going to go right back to what Emily said when she was talking about the fake news. Unless you actually see it, you can't really verify it. And I can tell you that when, you know, in California, my father has a friend who worked at the hospital, and the 3rd floor of this hospital, in fact, it was in Concord, it was Mount Diablo Hospital. The 3rd floor was always closed. They didn't need to use it. And it was sort of like an asthma respiratory unit. But after they would heavily spray, the next day they would open that unit because people were so affected. I am a big, big believer in chemtrails. I use orgone. I've gone so far to find out that there is supposedly red dried blood cells in the chemtrails that do not match any scientific database in the world. I can't confirm it, but I've heard it. And the heavy aluminums, it just, I could go on and on, but they were literally gridding in California, just like a checkerboard, like you said, in the sky. And they'll do it at night as well.
Yeah, they definitely, there's all sorts of aerosol and spraying programs going on. There isn't just one. We've interviewed several people on our show about the sky. There's people who put out great information, people like Clifford Carnicom, who deals with both chemtrails and Morgellons, because the two are related. Sophia Snowstorm.
Yes.
We've interviewed Elena Freeland, who wrote Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And we've also spoken with, and we will be again, actually coming up soon, Sean Gautreaux, who's documented cloaked cloudcraft, which are also in some ways related to the chemtrails. But this is a little bit different. There is so many things going on up above us, and for so many different reasons. So I think that they want people to believe that there's nothing wrong up there, that the skies always look like that, or that they're just contrails. But then they know that some people aren't going to believe that. So then they just want you to think that there's only chemtrails, and that those chemtrails are just for global warming, as you said. But then if you look into it beyond, there's several different kinds. And then there's also things that are existing inside of these chemtrails and beyond them, things like craft. I've seen, especially in the skies, I've seen some of the craziest stuff you could ever imagine in the skies over Southern California. I've seen what look like platforms floating through the sky. I've seen geometric structures inside of clouds. I've seen what are termed astral cities. I've seen there's something strange, I've seen what I would term black particle tech, sometimes in the sky that does these kinds of weird formations, all sorts of stuff. And so the idea that there's just one program is also a conspiracy, is also not right. There's multiple things going on. There's, agendas there's obviously an agenda to deplete people's health, to degrade the air that we breathe, to block the sun, which is something that we need to properly function as humans and to be healthy and to be properly sort of in line. So all of that is going on. And there's also things in the sky that they don't want us to see, that they're blocking.
The Mel Gibson Conspiracy movie. Everybody thought he was crazy, but at the end of the movie, all his conspiracy theories were there.
Yeah.
Was the helicopters, okay? Black helicopters that you couldn't hear. The guy who makes my orgonite, he always looks up and says, oh, there's another helicopter. My tool maker in Alberta, Canada, he'll look up in the sky. There's a helicopter kind of hovering over the area.
Yeah, I think that, so my opinion is that there's certain of us, certain people, you term them high vibrational people. I would say there are certain of us that carry a frequency with us that have, whoever they are, have been tracking through incarnations. And so the way they're able to identify us is not because I'm me in this body right now. It's because of the frequency that I carry, which is unique. And yeah, I think that there are people who have a high vibrated at a high rate, or who have a unique frequency, or, certain genetic memory or characteristics that can be traced back all the way throughout time, are ones who they're interested in tracking and sometimes harassing and driving crazy.
With the work that I do, I've got a ton of energy tools in my office because I ship on my website through my office, and I've got a big drawer full of orgonite. I've got like 15 pyramids sitting next to me. I can't even keep a regular light bulb in my office because the next day they're burnt out. Okay, that's how high the energy is in this room. But I look outside, there's no helicopters. I'm a little disappointed. Nobody likes me.
But one thing I just want to interject with the chemtrails is the mind conditioning. I don't know if you guys all have small children. I know Chris does, but in the first Cars movie, they actually put the chemtrails in the skies.
Yep.
is tire tracks. And so for me, I'm trying to observe everything without any emotion to see what I'm being programmed and what is this mind conditioning going on. And when I was in California, a lot of people thought I was crazy. They thought I was nuts. They hated me because I didn't vaccinate. My kid was never sick. And is what I started to see is how literally programmed everybody was, and how they just continuously gave up their power to the doctors, to the teachers, to everybody. And that was one of the big reasons why I got out. It wasn't just the vaccine law. It was this massive disconnection. I mean, we must have had so much fluoride in our water down there that people were just zombied out. And now that I'm in Oregon, it's not fully awake, but the mentality is much, much more open-minded. There's programming. There's a lot less programming and mind control up here so far.
That you've seen.
So far. Yeah.
You have a wonderful client in Oregon. She does a lot of psychic readings. She's almost up there with the Long Island medium. If anything bad's going to happen, it's going to happen in California. Truth is there to that, Emily? Tell me about California.
Yeah. So, Holly, your point about California is well taken, and I would agree with you. And I think there's many reasons for that. The main reason being Hollywood. When the people who began the studios moved out here from New York and they understood the natural properties of this area, including the presence of the Hollywood tree, which is used for casting spells on people, they understood what power could be gained. And so that's part of the reason that industry is here. And the propaganda that comes out of Hollywood is immense, and it is just not cool, to be into truth. It's not as, I experience a lot of what you speak about. People think I'm crazy or that they don't like me or whatever. It's a little bit different now for me than it was for a long time. But yeah, I think this is one of the hardest places. I think we get hit some of the hardest with chemtrails, and definitely some of the stuff that is in the chemtrails and some of the frequencies that are being beamed at us from HAARP and other kinds of, microwave technologies and different things are used for brain entrainment and for programming, for mind control. But the Hollywood thing is really, really big. And also there's a tremendous amount of what I call green fascism programming here. People obsessed with climate change and things like that, and not really understanding that actually the chemtrails are probably, if there is some kind of climate change or global warming or whatever going on, then it would actually be the chemtrails that are causing it. And they're actually proposing, this is so interesting. They deny that there are chemtrails, but they're proposing it that they want to do it in the future as the cause, as a cure or the solution to climate change or global warming, when actually it's very likely that it's the cause. So I have no tolerance for anybody who wants to go on and on about climate change, who claims they're an environmentalist, who is not addressing the aerosol spraying in the sky. And if you look at how many celebrities talk about climate change and all that kind of stuff, but you never hear it. I think with very few exceptions, like I know that Mariel Hemingway has spoken about them, and Roseanne Barr, a few other people, but for the most part, they just go on and on forever about all the damage that humans are doing with their cars and their air conditioning and all that kind of stuff, but they never mention the elephant in the room.
Exactly.
Just sitting in the hot tub, and then me and this guy were having this conversation. Without even asking him about it, he brought up the thing about 9/11, that the go-ahead was given from somewhere in the Pacific Ocean from a submarine.
Randy, I'll let you start.
Well, because the formal narrative was established in real time the day of the event. And it didn't matter what was actually being shown, because what they've perfected in the now, I guess, 54 years since the assassination of John F. Kennedy was the ability to, in real time, use media to paint a narrative that then is reinforced by the official government position. And all of this is scripted. I mean, on 9/11, you had a commentator on BBC in London describing Building 7 collapsing before Building 7
before
collapsed. It happened. Yeah. So, I mean, we were told basically, look here, don't look there. That's not what you see. We've deconstructed the video of the so-called planes. Were there planes? Was it no planes? Deplane. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about the planes, because what brought down the buildings on 9/11 was actually a criminal conspiracy. So we come back to the conspiracy thing again, because, you can put the label on somebody that they're a conspiracy theorist. But let's not forget something. Criminal conspiracy is a federal crime that has a very, very large sentence attached to it. We've had several high-profile politicians in the U.S. go to prison for 5 to 10 years for criminal conspiracy. So I challenge anyone when they call me a conspiracy theorist to prove that I have in fact participated in the conspiracy, or am I mapping out a conspiracy that has been performed in the background?
Yeah, so 9/11, that was really good, like that breakdown that Randy just did. Also, what I would say is looking a little deeper into 9/11. 9/11 was a lot about hidden kinds of technologies and software. And there's a thread running through that. There's a lot of there's so much information out there about 9/11, and there were so many things going on that day. It wasn't just one thing. Like there was multiple levels of multiple things going on. But people who are interested, like some of the less talked about, but I think most important books about that, I think that really helped me to understand 9/11. There's a couple of them. The first is a book that was sort of written as a novel or like a nonfiction, but to sort of protect what he was saying. It's a great book called Coup de 12 by David E. Martin. And then, of course, Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood is very interesting. That's like a textbook. And then Joseph Farrell wrote an interesting book called Hidden Finance, Rogue Networks, and Secret Sorcery, the Fascist International 9/11 and Penetrated Operations. And all three of those books give not only a different kind of level of information and narrative about than the official story, but also then the official conspiracy theory that was, immediately came out with, about thermite and all that kind of nonsense. Yeah. There's many layers to this conspiracy, and when you really get down to the bottom of it, it's about there's so many messages being sent, and it's a really far deeper event than most people could ever imagine.
Well, and we have to bear in mind too, it was a mass trauma event.
Yeah.
And all of these events that we see happening now are designed to create trauma in the collective psyche. The Jfk assassination was probably the first major event like this where we got to participate. It wasn't actually in real time, but it was so thoroughly covered by the media, and the details were so gruesome. But we did get to see in real time, for those of us who were alive and remember it, was the assassination of the alleged assassin in the basement of the Dallas Police Department, the shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald, which occurred on a Sunday morning when most of the country was just waking up. And then live coverage on television, we saw Jack Ruby cross over, stick the gun in Oswald's stomach, and blow him away live on television.
How convenient, right?
All trauma. See, and it's a very nice script, because now we can fold it up like an accordion. That actually is the conspiracy right there. 9/11 was the same thing. It was designed to traumatize the collective psyche in preparation for what they wanted to do next, which was really stomp down hard on our rights. We then were willing to accept being anally probed, frisked, and x-rayed before we could board an aircraft in any airport in the United States and probably anywhere in the Western world.
So many different stories that you hear about it, that the confusion paints a picture of nothing.
Donald Trump knows why 9/11 happened.
Well,
I
sure.
guarantee you he knows, to declare a new 9/11 investigation from his side, that was just ass-kissing politics. Because Donald Trump knows why the towers come down, and he knows who the key players were, because Donald Trump was very connected into the same network that was responsible for erecting those towers, maintaining them, and also some of the people that were taken out in that blast, which was very targeted.
Yeah, and one more thing I just want to say, Chris, that it was interesting that guy you met told you that the order was given from a submarine. There's some details in that book by David Martin that match up to that.
Now, let's talk about the conspiracy of cell phones. Basically, it's a satellite link. Now, I just worked on somebody today who has a lot of sensitivity to electricity, chemicals, and various things, and I found a lot of damage in her nervous system from cell phone radiation. And as soon as I moved it out and started repairing the nervous system, she felt a lot better.
The original cell phones themselves were actually analog technology. When we entered the 2000s, we entered the era of the digital cell phone technology, which then took broadcast frequencies into the gigahertz arena. And that's where we really started to see the problems. The early ones were actually rather low power. And I'll just point out, too, that my understanding is there's no satellites involved with cell phones at all. All that technology is terrestrial based. It's all tower based. So we're transmitting at increasingly higher levels of energy that are in fact local sources of non-ionizing radiation. It's the same thing with the smart meters. Basically, the phones, the towers, the smart meters, and all the other devices that are being put into play as part of this Internet of Things is designed to create this smart grid. And then you also have the smart dust that has been laced into the chemtrail spraying, yes, which is creating an environment where we're now developing a nanobot system on top of that. We're a walking antenna array as a result of all of this.
Yeah, this was a question I didn't expect coming, but many years ago, I watched a video from someone who, I thought was pretty quack in every way, but something about this one video she made stuck with me. And she was talking about how the cell phone contract, if you actually read into it, was basically, if you read into all the legal definitions of the things, the reason they call them cell phones is that this is an instrument that is there to basically program, degrade, destroy the cellular network in your body, and that by signing your cell contract that you are agreeing to that. And there's I always remember that. So I don't know what to make of that, but if you really think about it, it's it's interesting that they call them cellular phones. You know what I mean? Cell phones.
Well, I think that's actually interesting. I never heard that before, Emily, but
yeah,
the concept wasn't lost on me that basically the phones themselves and the networks themselves were forming the cellular aspects of the human body, or that they're creating this neural network that eventually, and listen, right now, they're ready to bring online as part of long-term evolution, the LTE system that Verizon pioneered, 5G. And we're now at the point where we're going to be receiving signals at 5 gigahertz. Listen, 5 gigahertz of energy of anything, you can boil water with it. Much less blood and tissue.
Boil your brain.
Yeah, if you watch, I can't remember the name of the guy, but there's a guy who, there's a bunch of videos came out a few weeks ago. You can find them on the YouTube channel Kafka Winston World. She puts out some great stuff on that. The guy who's the head of this project, talking at the press club in Washington, and I've never seen somebody who is just so sick and such a psychopath talking about how we can't be worried about any of the concerns. We just need to go ahead because we need to be the first country ahead in this technology. I just never, I have to say that I've never seen such psychopathic behavior for 10 or 12 minutes of talking. It was highly disturbing. This was about 3 or 4 weeks back, so you can probably find these videos online on YouTube. Take a look at that and you'll understand what the agenda actually is.
Holly, what kind of problems do you see in people from cell phones?
Well, I'm really glad you brought this up because my father, who's never had a health issue in his life, not on any medication, was just diagnosed with suspicious cells that are a pre-trigger to cancer right in his jaw where he holds up his phone. So I'm not a radiation expert. I heard Randy mention the non-ionized radiation. Not sure, but I know I have heard in Europe that if you're under 10, it's recommended you don't use a cell phone. I think they're huge tracking devices. I think they do put out massive radiation. I have a shungite little protector on my phone. I don't know how well it works, but it makes me feel better. I turn off my Wi-Fi at night. And I also know that those stingrays, those big gray things on the highway are extracting all of our information. Now, the 5G, what we're going to is what I've heard is that now when the maintenance men need to work or install these towers, they're not turning the towers off, and they're coming down with leukemia, all kinds of different cancers. So I have a bag of Orgone tower busters in my car, and when I see a big tower, I huck one at it. And, to try to neutralize it as best as I can. But I think the cell phones are very, very damaging.
I'm trying to envision Holly driving down the road and rolling down her window and throwing Oregon at it.
Oh, it's cool.
Take that, you bad tower.
Yeah. But you know what, Chris? You know how I told you how I was just feeling really attacked, and right before our healing, I was advised to turn my cell phone off when I bust a tower. I didn't do that, and I busted this ginormous tower on I think on Highway 58 in Oregon. And right after I busted it, I felt crazy, and all of my pain I was in an accident in January, everything flared up. Like, it was the first time that it's like, wow, I think I actually am being attacked. So all the other times I turn off my phone and I just like, I hack it. It's really rebellious. I like it.
There was a time when you could not only turn your phone off, but take the battery out of it. And that was actually how you could shut it down, because even turned off, the phones continue to track. You now, with the new smartphones, starting with the iPhone and almost everything that's in 4G, the batteries are built into the phones. You can no longer take the batteries out of them. So those phones are effectively always on.
Yeah, I still have an Android phone you can take the battery out of, and I'm feeling like if there's not a way to get a phone that a battery can be removed from, then that might be the end of having a cell phone for me. I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't like, everybody has their sort of limit of how much they're willing to, be tracked or whatever. But I don't like this idea that my phone can't ever be really turned off. So that might be the line in the sand as far as cell phones for me.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Holly.
Oh, thank you. I have a new cell phone, and you cannot get into the battery. Right. And I'm going to see if I can backtrack and get one that I can remove the battery. I don't like it, and my phone feels really dirty. There's a different energy about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Holly, you and I'm sure you get lots of people asking, how can I protect myself? Okay, from all this stuff, from everything and anything. I found something out. I was given this through my pendulum from Source. If you tell your thymus gland to create a field of protection around you, so basically just make the intent, thymus gland, please create a field of protection around me. And if you want to list everything from smart meters, cell phones, chemtrails, this will protect you. Try it, Holly. Thymus gland, please create a field of protection around me.
I just did it silently, and I felt it. I felt like this energy move out of me. I could feel it. Not move out of me, but expand within me.
I did it too. And I just felt, because I didn't feel like I was having to expel anything from inside of me, but I just did it as you were talking about it. And I did feel some sort of energetic circle around myself. It was very interesting.
Yes. Now, we take our smart meter out. We have a smart meter right now because we moved up to Oregon. We wanted to rent for a year so we could get the lay of the land. We just purchased a house, and we will take the smart meter out, and it's expensive. It's $45 a month, but I don't want to be in that smart grid.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting ready here. They just installed one in our house last month. Unbidden, uninformed, walked onto the property, boom, put it in. I came home, I saw the truck disappeared. I went out, looked, sure enough, there it was. So here in a few weeks, I'm ordering an analog meter. I'm going to take the meter out. We have to do some diligence with the electric people on this to inform them of our actions and why we're doing this. And we also need some documentation on the meters themselves, because I want to know what they're actually doing.
How does somebody know if they have a smart meter?
Well, you'll recognize it because it's a flat enclosed box. There's no longer the glass globe over it with the analog meter that spins round and round. It's a very different, you'll know. quite frankly, I would have known within hours anyway, because the energy that comes off of it, I'm sensitive to.
Yeah, when I first heard about this stuff going on, years back, I posted a sign right out next to our Sprint reader that says, "Under no circumstances is anyone to ever remove this meter from this house." And so a few months, maybe a year after I did that, a note came in the mail saying that they were going to be installing smart meters. And when the guy got here installed, he saw the note on the side. He came around front and asked if I was sure, and I said, "I'm sure," and then he moved on. So that note stays there though, because they don't. I think the only reason he came around and asked is because the note was there. Because obviously, from what I hear from most people, it's just all of a sudden it's done and no one informed them. So that's something for people who haven't already had one put on their house. You can put a notice out there, and that seemed to be helpful in my situation.
So Randy, you say you're sensitive to it. What do you feel when you're in that field?
When I'm in the field, I feel a pressure. It starts around my chest and then it radiates. You can feel the energy off of it. It almost makes me nauseous. The first day it was here, I was very hyper, heart palpitations, a lot of sensitivity to energetic fields. I'm sensitive to light frequencies, and so I was getting a lot of these lighter rays coming off the side of my eyes, much like you would get if you were getting a cluster headache.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's putting off a lot of energy, and the only thing we can do right now is just mitigate it. But I will be doing this, and I will document it. I'll put it up on YouTube when I take the meter out, and we'll see where we go from here. If the power company wants to pursue us, we're not asking them for permission. We're going to inform them this is what we're doing and why.
It's your house, right?
Yeah, it's our house, our property. And the contractors that put it in never informed us that they were going to do so.
On that note, we are about out of time. I want to thank Randy. Thank you so much for being on. I love your show. You're somebody who's not afraid to speak. It's people like us, yourself, Holly, Emily, Bob, Emily, thank you so much. I love you. Holly, as always. Everybody, thank you again for being on A Quantum View. This is Chris Kehler. We are out of here.